Welcome to This Explainer. Look, if you're tuning into this, you already know the deal. Leadership isn't just about having the right answers, right? It's about having the right presence. So today, we're going to completely unpack the profound underlying systems behind unshakable leadership. We'll explore the hidden psychology that literally dictates who gets listened to, who gets promoted, and, well, who gets completely ignored the second they walk into a room. Let's get into it.
Why do the smartest people often go unheard? It is a wildly frustrating reality, isn't it? I mean, we all know someone who is just incredibly brilliant. Maybe it's a colleague, or hey, maybe it's even you, whose ideas are constantly just overlooked in meetings. They have the data, they have the insights, but somehow someone else always gets the credit. Well, here is the brutal truth of influence. It is not about being the loudest. It's not about being the smartest. It's about understanding exactly how the human brain actually processes information. Because influence, it's a completely separate, entirely learnable skill from intelligence. Think about your last big pitch or presentation. You probably spent hours agonizing over the script, right? Making sure every sentence was perfect. Well, when you really break it down, it's pretty wild. The words you carefully choose to speak account for less than 10% of your actual power in any room. 10%. The other 90%? That whole massive slice of the pie is entirely psychology and strategy. Literally every single element of influential speaking, from the way you enter a conversation, your physical posture, all the way to the psychological triggers you activate in your listener, that's all part of that massive 90%. So if you're only focusing on the words, you're kind of losing the game before you even open your mouth. Section 1. The pitfalls. Fatal communication mistakes. Because to build up that 90% of psychological influence, we first have to stop destroying it through our own unconscious habits. These are those subtle, fatal mistakes we all fall victim to, the ones that literally drain our authority before we can even finish a sentence. So, we generally operate in one of two mindsets. On one hand, we've got reactive communication. Now, this is the follower's mindset. It's waiting for others to set the tone, constantly apologizing for just having an opinion, using those minimizing phrases like, I just wanted to see if maybe you know the ones. Doing that trains people to see you as someone who's always asking for permission. But on the other hand, we have the calm, grounded reality of purposeful communication. Over here, you are leading. You're setting boundaries, and you're speaking with absolute intention. You don't just react to the frame of the conversation, you set the frame. You aren't asking for a seat at the table because, well, you already own your chair.
And here is another incredibly common trap. A lot of really smart people think that more information automatically equals more persuasion. So what do? They just dump facts, data, and statistics, hoping the sheer weight of their logic is going to win out. I mean, we've all sat through those presentations that are just pure walls of text, right? It's exhausting. And that's because overwhelming people triggers cognitive overload. See, the human brain processes information emotionally first and logically second. When you just dump information on someone without a clear narrative, you trigger mental resistance, and your audience, they just shut down. Moving on to Section 2, the setup, the neuroscience of first impressions. Because if dumping fact doesn't win respect, what actually does? Well, we need to look at the neurological reality of what's called thin slice judgments. This is where respect is won or lost, in a tiny fraction of time, way before your logical arguments even begin to surface. Let's actually walk step by step through exactly what the brain evaluates in this absolutely critical 3-second window. This is taking abstract neuroscience and turning it into a concrete checklist. So in second 1, the brain registers your physical presence, your posture, and your movement. Are you taking up appropriate space, or are you physically shrinking yourself? In second 2, it processes your facial expression and eye contact. Are you alert and engaged, but without coming off as overly aggressive? And by second 3, right as you open your mouth, it evaluates your vocal tone and pacing. Think about that. In literally 3 seconds, people have already unconsciously categorized your status, your confidence, and your competence. True authority is calm, controlled, and magnetic. We so often mistake aggression for authority. Think of that one manager who just yells to get things done. But aggression, being loud, dominating, getting overly defensive, actually signals profound weakness. It broadcasts to the entire room that you feel so out of control, you literally have to use force just to get your way. Genuine authority, on the other hand, is entirely about emotional regulation. It doesn't push people away, it draws people in, like a magnet. Section 3, the secret weapon, strategic silence. Okay, now let's explore one of the most powerful yet totally counterintuitive ways to project that calm authority.
We are completely shifting our perspective from viewing silence as this awkward void that needs to be filled to using silence as the ultimate tool of control. Pause. Now, that silence right there, that was entirely intentional. It completely commands your attention, doesn't it? When the speaking stops, the brain naturally leans forward. Strategic silence is arguably the single most underutilized tool in modern leadership. We're all so terrified of dead air that we just fill it with filler words, ums, ahs, likes. But embracing the quiet, that completely changes the dynamic of a room. So the crucial point here is that mastering these specific types of pauses signals massive thoughtfulness, and it naturally draws your audience right in. First, the confidence pause. This happens before you speak. It shows you aren't desperate to fill the air and that your words are actually worth waiting for. Then there's the emphasis pause. This happens immediately after you make a bold statement. You just slow down, stop, and let the sheer weight of your words land. And finally, the invitation silence. This one is incredibly effective in negotiations. You just stay quiet, and the other person naturally feels compelled to fill that conversational gap, which 9 times out of 10 leads them to reveal invaluable information. But the ultimate defensive silence is the processing pause. Imagine you're in a tense meeting, okay, and someone completely challenges your work or asks a really critical question. Your natural biological instinct is to fire back immediately to defend yourself. But taking a deliberate 3-second processing pause under fire, that proves something vital. It proves you are choosing your response deliberately. You're not just reacting to a threat, you're thoughtfully evaluating data. Honestly, that small pause alone establishes total dominance over the situation. Section 4, the conclusion, building magnetic authority. Let's bring all these frameworks together into a unified theory of magnetic presence. How do we actually take the neuroscience, the emotional regulation, and that strategic silence we've just covered and use them to manufacture genuine charisma on command? Now, what's really interesting about this psychological shift is how clearly it highlights the difference between people-pleasing and true authority. If you're seeking approval, constantly mirroring others just to fit in, or acting super defensive the moment you get challenged, you are projecting weakness signals, and people pick up on this instantly. To build magnetic authority, you have to shift your behavior. You need to set clear boundaries, maintain your authentic identity regardless of who happens to be in the room, and emotionally attune to others without losing your own composure. You know, charisma is so often treated like this rare genetic gift, like you're either born with it or you're just out of luck. But actually, scratch that. That is a complete myth. Charisma is a highly learnable system built on very specific pillars of psychological connection. It requires presence, intensity, emotional attunement so you can read the room, genuine curiosity to ask questions that actually matter, and energy management, which ensures your positive momentum becomes highly contagious to everyone around you. I really want to zero in on that first pillar for a second. Presence, intensity. To achieve it, you have to give someone 100% of your undivided mental and emotional energy. I mean, 100%. No checking your phone under the table, no scanning the room over their shoulder to see who else is there, no mentally rehearsing your next talking point while they're still speaking. In our modern, hyper-distracted world, giving someone 100% of your attention is just incredibly rare. When you actually do it, the impact is absolutely magnetic. Which brings us to this essential truth about influence. The highest level of authority isn't about shining the spotlight on yourself. It's really about directing that spotlight warmly and intentionally onto others. When you master your own presence well enough to make the people around you feel important, valued, and deeply understood, they won't just listen to you. They will naturally look to you as a leader. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Just look at your own interactions today. When you walk into a meeting, a negotiation, or even just a casual conversation in the hallway, are you waiting for permission? Are you reacting to the room? Or are you stepping into your communication mastery and commanding it? The psychology of influence is right there. It's literally waiting for you to use it. Now it is time to put it to work.